Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So let's start with Sean Payton to say, do you think that, number one, is he going to be coaching in 2023?
I think he is, because coaches that want to get back in the game don't like to stay away from for very long. So if he's still out there next year, it kind of makes me wonder how much he really wants to coach again. You know, when Bill Cowher stepped away, I felt like for years people thought that he was going to go back, and he never did. And eventually, as years went on, that stopped being brought up. But Peyton kind of seems a little bit different. You know, he's talked about coming back multiple times. He's kept himself in the news cycle. He said what he would do to fix Russell Wilson. He said that he's joked with Mickey Loomis about trading for Taysom Hill. So all of these things, it's in addition to, you know, his gig on Fox, keeps him in the news. And I think that there's part of that that's on purpose, you know, so people don't forget about him. So I guess I would be surprised if he's not coaching in 2023, but the reason that would happen is that he didn't like the options that were available.
The options right now are the Texans, the Panthers, the Colts, the Broncos, the Cardinals. Do any of those make the most sense, or does one make more sense than the others?
I think the Saints would welcome him going to the Panthers because they would ask for more compensation than they would ask for a team out of the division. But it doesn't really seem like that's going to happen. The Cardinals seems like a possibility. The Broncos seems like a possibility, although, you know, if the Broncos are going to trade for Sean Payton, they already made the Russell Wilson trade. So that's a ton of picks they're giving up in 2 years. But if they feel he's the guy, you know, maybe that's possible. I think with the Colts, could Payton get along with ownership, who's been doing, you know, some crazy things lately with hiring Jeff Saturday, and I don't know where that's going to go. And I would be surprised if it was the Texans. That just seems like an organization that, while it does have, you know, a lot of young talent and a very high draft pick, they've gone through coaches so much lately, and is that where you want to be after so much upheaval? I don't know, but to me, the Cardinals and the Broncos would make the most sense.
Is there a wild card?
I mean, I guess the Rams, if McVay retired or stepped away, but the timing of that seems like it wouldn't line up. And then the Rams would have to want Peyton, and I'm not sure if they do. So I guess that would be the wild card, but I feel like McVay would have to make a decision pretty quickly if that was going to be the case. And I seriously doubt they wouldn't tell him to take all the time that he needs.
Kat Terrell's with us. She's on Twitter at @Kat_Terrell. We're talking about Sean Payton and what may be out there. Okay, so the Saints have Sean Payton's rights through the end of the 2024 season. So 2 more years, essentially. How does the compensation, or does the compensation shift year to year? Meaning, if Payton doesn't go anywhere this year, does it lessen or strengthen the market for him next year potentially?
I think the compensation would drop enormously. If you look at the Bruce Arians trade or whatnot a few years ago, the Bucs only got a 7th-round pick for him. He was the guy who retired, and then he came back very quickly, but he only had a year left on his deal. So it didn't really seem like teams were going to throw a lot out there for him. I think the compensation was a lot more in the past for some of these coaches that had a couple years left on their contract. But, you know, it's interesting with these other coaches, the major coaching trades that we've seen, like Parcells and Holmgren and Belichick, it all really seemed to stem around these coaches wanting more personnel control than their current team had wanted to give them. So it does make me wonder, you know, was that a thing with Payton? Because Payton, I think, had a lot of control in New Orleans, and he's even said himself, you know, it's not necessarily about the quarterback situation, even though that's a factor. It's how does he get along with ownership in the front office. So It'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, I think if he doesn't go anywhere this year, the Saints wouldn't get much for him next year.
You at ESPN.com, you laid out 7 examples of coaching trades. I think you listed in the last 30 years. Do you see any that maybe look like a similar comp to the Payton situation?
I was working on this for so long that I feel like my brain went to mush. Mike Holmgren got an extremely long contract to go to the Seahawks. I'm not sure any teams are really giving any coach an 8-year deal after what happened with John Gruden. I mean, college teams are doing it. I think it's insane to do it for any coach. Why would you ever give, a coach that long of a contract knowing you will probably be paying him to leave at some point, unless you're talking about Bill Belichick or Nick Saban? Belichick, that wasn't much compensation for that unique situation. I think it was like a 4th and 7th round pick for Belichick, a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick. So, I mean, Gruden is a ton of compensation. It would probably be somewhere in the middle of all these. Like, I keep seeing a 1st round pick. My question is, if it was the Cardinals, would they part with the 3rd overall pick? The Saints would be ecstatic. I don't know if the Cardinals would want to do it. So if it's the Cardinals, do we automatically move down a round to the 2nd round? Because if it's the Broncos, they have the 49ers pick, so that's already very late in the 1st round. So I could see that team giving up a 1st round pick, but obviously the Saints would want more compensation, but they might not be able to get it.
Do you know what? I mean, we've seen the reports that the Saints want a 1st round pick, but as you just alluded, I mean, there's a giant difference between the 3rd pick or the 12th pick and the 30th pick. So if it is a later one, do you know what else the Saints may covet?
I'm not sure. I just know that it's obvious they probably want to start negotiating at a 1st round pick. Doesn't mean they're going to get one. I do know that they've been, bracing or thinking about this really since the day Payton left. And I know that's how I knew if it had been a team in the division, obviously they were going to hold them to more. They want Payton to be able to coach somewhere if he wants, to be happy, but they expect to be compensated in return, and all the parties understand that. Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton have a great relationship, so it's not like the Saints are trying to hold him hostage. They're very grateful for everything he did for the organization, but it's got to be something fair between all sides, and a few of these, I think the NFL has gotten involved, or at least I think that was the case with the Parcells trade and maybe the Belichick trade. But yeah, it's I'm not really sure what they'd want after the 1st rounder. What I want to know is if the Saints were already thinking about this I know they're thinking about it. I wonder if it factored into their decision last year to trade for another 1st round pick, that they were always thinking they would get a 1st round pick this year.
So you tap danced around it was literally the note I had just written down that I wanted to ask you.
Well, yeah, I was kind of just me rambling. Sorry.
So, no, but you've alluded to, and we've heard that before though, Kat. Like when the Saints made the decision to trade for the deals they did for Olave and Penning, they knew they were likely going to get compensated for Sean Payton. Do you know or believe that to be the case?
I don't know if that factored into their thinking for that specifically. I do know that the Saints, from the very beginning, kind of always assumed there was a good chance that Payton would be coaching again in 2023, just somewhere else. So I think they always thought there was a chance for compensation. I'm just not sure if they thought when they made the trade, hey, we're getting a 1st round pick back next year, or if they just thought, hey, I really want these 2 guys. Because the 2 draft picks they ended up getting are basically the guys that people said they would be getting from day one. Everyone said Olave was a very good prospect to go to the Saints, and everyone knew that Teron Armstead probably wasn't coming back, and they needed a left tackle. So, it's possible that they just said, hey, we're just going to go in for these guys, and whatever happens next year, whatever happens. Because Mickey Loomis has been around long enough to know that nothing's guaranteed, and Payton could decide, hey, you know what, I kind of like not coaching, and I'm just never coming back.
Do you know what kind of timeline or best guess as far as a timeline for this to be rectified?
Well, he can't interview anywhere until the 17th, which is what's really kind of weird. The NFL holding him to that rule. Yeah, I know the Saints hold his rights, but he's not currently coaching, so that's kind of odd.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to get any resolution to anything until at least next week. But you would assume that no one wants to drag this out, right? Because you've got a lot of decisions to make. I mean, first of all, the Saints need a quarterback. And if they're going to go out in the market, start looking at quarterbacks, for example, if they wanted to trade for Derek Carr, well, Derek Carr's salary, his massive salary, becomes guaranteed on February 15th. So if they have a first-round pick, maybe that changes their mind about how they approach a quarterback trade and the draft. Look, all of this, for many reasons, needs to get done quickly, but usually you want to start seeing things in place before the Senior Bowl because that's when staffs are finalized and, hires are made for next year and things like that. And that's coming up at the end of the month.
Kat, before you go, I think all of us are assuming that the New Orleans Saints are going to try to draft a quarterback. Are you of that opinion as well? Like that's the target with with whatever asset they might get for Sean Payton, or is there another target they have in mind?
I would think if they got a high enough pick, that would be what they're thinking. But, it's hard for me to think that way until I see what they get for Payton. But if they did have a pick, yes, I would think they would draft a quarterback. They can make a trade for someone like Carr, but you're paying a huge salary and then you're giving up more picks and you're not, I don't know. It's not the easiest thing to do. It's why I keep saying I wouldn't be totally surprised if we just see Andy Dalton re-signed for another year, and then they try to address quarterback next year, depending on how well they perform. I think you really got to look at every single option possible, but the one that seems the least likely is that Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback next year, just based on how vocally upset he was after they went ahead with Andy Dalton instead of him, because now that Winston has been passed up several times, when they started Taysom over him, when they went and got Deshaun Watson, when they started Dalton over him. If I were him, I'd want a fresh start. I want to go somewhere else. So Dennis Allen said that doesn't really make a difference, but I kind of disagree. I think he could factor in.
She is Kat Terrell. You can read the piece up at ESPN.com about the Sean Payton watch, how it continues, and all the info you need there. And she's on Twitter at @Kat_Terrell. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.